Hi, I'm William Mills at Finovate Europe, and I'm here with JP Nicols. How are you doing, JP?
Great to be here.
JP is Managing Director of Fintech Forge. JP, what is Fintech Forge and what is your company's mission?
Right, so our mission is to help financial institutions build and develop and leverage their innovation capacity, both internally and externally through better fintech partnerships and strategic investments. So in shorthand, I sometimes describe it as we're essentially an outboard innovation department. Outboard meaning they still steer the ship, decide where they're going and the direction that they're heading, but we provide that outboard power for them for both the internal innovation program and also we can become sort of their outboard venture capital arm.
Interesting. Well, in addition to your work with Fintech Forge, you're also on Breaking Bank's Power Hour chat in a few hours.
That's right.
So tell us about that, and what are some of the topics you think you'll be talking about?
Yeah,
today?
well, it'll be Brett King, Jim Maroos, and I, so hard telling. It could go anywhere between the three of us. But I think we're going to talk about the future, right? What's happening? What do we see now? I'm hoping we talk a little bit about the past too, because I think we're a good 10 years now into the fintech revolution, and I think it's fair to kind of ask where are we at this stage, because I think we're still in the really early stages. I think that we're no longer at the point where we need to spend a lot of time convincing people that you need to change. We used to spend opportunities like this grabbing people by the virtual lapels and saying, look, the world is changing much faster than you are and you need to change too. I think everybody gets that at this point.
Right.
And what I hear most often is organizations say, yeah, we get that, but how? What do we do first? And that's why we built Fintech Forge, was to help them with that.
Speaking of change, recently we saw the BBT SunTrust announcement, merger, so to say.
Right.
What are your thoughts on that, and what do you think the implications are for financial institutions and consumers in the United States?
Right. Well, consolidation isn't anything new. When I started in the banking industry in the late 1980s in the US, we had over 13,000 banks, and we're down to less than 5,000 now. We took a little bit of a pause over the last decade, driven by the financial crisis, right? We had quite a few more at the beginning of the crisis, and then post-crisis, everything kind of leveled out. But I think that the next era that we're already in, frankly, is different than the last one. The last one was about who's executing the industry's predominant business model better than everybody else, and the winners were those that had higher stock prices and therefore higher currency to acquire others. And I think that we're now in the era of agility, and so it's the organizations that can move faster and adapt to change and create change and manage change inside their organization. So the BB&T and SunTrust merger, they claim they're going to have $1.6 billion in cost savings from this, and they claim that they're going to reinvest a lot of that into repositioning the business for the modern digital reality. So I hope they do. I mean, I think they have some pretty smart people on their management team, and I think it's not just about, hey, we run a bank in the era of brick and mortar and pen and paper and face-to-face, and we have two of those, and let's put them together and take the cost savings out. You need to do something with that cost savings and to reinvest it into more of a digital platform. So hopefully that's what we see, and that should benefit consumers.
What do you think, or what tips would you give financial institutions to be thinking about that are interested in innovating this year?
Yeah, so the simplest thing is get started now, right? You're going to make some mistakes, you're going to figure it out. I think that most organizations err on the side of what we like to call paralysis by analysis, and it's natural. I mean, the world is moving ever faster, as Jim Maroos likes to say. The bad news is it'll never move this slowly again, and I think he's right about that. And so it's natural to want to slow down and think more deeply about these new ideas that have big risks and big stakes attached to them. But in reality, what we need to do is move faster. And instead of figuring out how we can more carefully make these really big bets, it's how can we chunk those bets down into smaller pieces so that we can test and learn. Because as the great Steve Blank says, the answers are outside the building.
Right.
Right? We're not going to figure it out talking to one another inside the four walls of our conference table, no matter how many people we put around it. So we've got to get out into the marketplace and test these ideas. So number one, I think, is get started. Number two is where it is worth thinking about is why are we innovating? It's not just chasing this piece of technology or that piece of technology or emulating what somebody else does. It's really figuring out what's our why and how do we figure out a way to differentiate ourselves. I just met with a large European bank this morning and they're struggling with it. This is a huge, globally known brand, and they've got an innovation team. They've just hired a new chief innovation officer, and now they're kind of like, well, now what do we do?
No.
Right.
Gosh.
And I think it's really understanding. One of the things they talked about was benchmarking. Well, we want to benchmark all these people. I said, well, the problem with benchmarking is now all you've done is anchored yourself to your peers. And the thing about the fintech revolution is this wasn't driven by banks. So it wasn't about what did the most innovative bank do. Even the most innovative banks are still playing catch up. So the world has opened up, and it's beyond just kind of benchmarking against peer groups.
Well, in closing, I'm kind of curious to find out your thoughts as how can fintechs and banks work better together?
Well, that's exactly why we built Fintech Forge. And I'll start with maybe how I don't think they can, and that is just more contact. My co-founder, Jason Henrichs, likes to call it the fintech petting zoo. And going to the petting zoo doesn't make you a farmer, right? So what I see is a lot of efforts are increasing the size of the petting zoo. Let's put more animals in it and get more visitors. And if you're not following that analogy, right? It's more banks, more fintechs, more meetings.
Right.
We met with a bank earlier in the year and said, oh, we're a fintech pioneer. We've got 20 projects going with fintechs. And we came to learn that what that meant was they've had meetings with 20 fintechs. 0 projects in flight.
So they're not really doing stuff, they're talking about it?
That's right. They're not really, but they're talking about it externally, so it feels like they're doing projects, right? It feels like they're making progress. So how banks and fintechs can work better together is really understanding what problem are they solving and for whom. And some fintechs are good at that, some aren't. Most banks are not, some are. But really understanding kind of what I just said a moment ago, it's not about chasing this piece of technology or that capability, it's understanding who has this problem and why, and if we can solve that, and we may not build it in-house, we might need a fintech partner to do that, but that's going to take us a long way towards the progress of doing something real that's going to create real benefit.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. Well, we really appreciate your time. And again, this is William Mills with JP Nicols at Finovate Europe.